One of the toughest things is to be vulnerable and to put yourself out there, right? In this self-directed guide, one little thing, self-directed guide, every time I open up a page in this book, I feel myself vulnerable. I feel myself exposed. Um, and I think, like, okay, you have processed through all of this stuff and you're on the other side of it. That's the thing with vulnerability, is that sometimes it resembles a grief where it comes in waves, ebbs and flows. So I was filming just a little quick video about the importance of family therapy. Then I led into a segue where I was talking about this book and what it kind of helped me with the way I was able to explore and process different relationships. And the primary relationship was the relationship between myself and my father, who was, for the most part, largely absent. And so when I turn to certain pages and I see certain words and I see them looking back at me, sometimes I feel that vulnerability all over again, right? And then I'm like, okay, but I have this book out here, right? I have it out on Amazon for people, because then I think about, like, okay, impact. How would this impact my children? How would this impact, my brother on my dad's, my brother on from my dad, as well as my sister from that side. And so, these are emotions that you're always going to kind of process differently. This book has been out, or this guide has been out, I believe, for 2 years now, almost. And you're going to process things differently. One of the biggest things that, this guide has helped me to process, not only how much of my identity was tied into this negative self-talk, or this negative view that I had of myself in my early adolescent years. So just as I was forming the identity of who I was and seeing that my household was a little bit different than my friend's household in terminologies that are used to describe a child, right? And so those become trigger points. And so as I have begun to explore and process this over years, right? I think I really went into in-depth exploration in my 20s. So from 11 to 13 years old, as you're kind of shaping, and as I, as a young girl, was shaping my identity, was beginning to shape, and understanding that my father was not a part of my household, brought shame and embarrassment to myself. And so I started to live in shame. And then that shame kind of took a turn, 14 to probably 18, where it became more anger, explosive anger. And then once I got into college, I remember just like really thinking, like, wow, you're in college. What are you doing? Like, why are you still, what are you angry for now? And I still couldn't quite, piece it all together until I had my children. And it was a little bit after I had my children. So at the age of 20, at that point I had dropped out of college, became pregnant, and I thought, the right thing to do was to get married, because I did not want a child out of wedlock. And so me and my ex-husband, we got married. I'm 20 years old, so now I'm a wife, I'm a soon-to-be mom, and I am starting down a whole nother path of, okay, I'm gonna write this thing because I don't want any child of mine to experience what I experienced, um, in that time frame of, kind of formulating who your parents are. And so, I would say, like, probably once I realized that, okay, um, you're still not where you need to be, or you're still not healed, or you're still kind of operating from a place of deficits, right? And so I was probably like 25 or something when I really started in-depth exploration and really started connecting pieces. And I, because at that point, we had moved from Virginia to North Carolina to Connecticut, and I'm tracking the path of my husband at that time. And I had settled into the role as a wife, a mom, a stay-at-home mom, who, eventually wanted to go back to school and do all these things. Eventually, him and we divorced, and I really, just started really trying to focus and exploring more and processing more. As I turn the pages of this book and I see words like rejection, when I see words like bastard, when I see words like just kind of heavy and very emotionally laden words that really takes a toll on me. And I'm processing through that. So being vulnerable, sometimes is, like I said, that wave, that ebb and flow, about, where you're at or where you even come from, right? I have come so far over the past like 20 some odd years or whatnot. Definitely a lot farther than where I was as an adolescent, and like really living with a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment. And I've come so far. And so, like, it's just so funny how, like, trying to help some other people through this thing, that you still like, wait, that's a little vulnerable space for me a little bit. And it's okay to acknowledge that. I always give myself permission to feel my feels. I always give space for myself to say, I'm always growing, I'm always healing. But, at the end of this, I just wanted to kind of say, that I did do a lot of work in this book. I talk about a lot of my, relationship with my dad and how I was able to tie it in to other areas of my life. And that was just one piece. A lot of women have that story, or have this particular story where, dad wasn't always around or whatever. And, how important it is. But I was pretty much kind of going back to this topic of family therapy and how important it is for not only for your child to be in therapy, but for the parent to be in therapy with their child and participating in family therapy, and working out some of those dynamics and problems and things like that. So I just kind of like wanted to share, just a little space of vulnerability here with you. Peace.